Let me describe something and see if it sounds familiar. You need to make a decision. It could be a big one, a career move, a relationship, a major change, or it could be something small. Doesn't matter. Either way, instead of deciding, you start thinking. And the thinking leads to more thinking. And the more you think, the more complicated it gets. Every option has upsides and downsides. Every choice closes other doors. What if you're wrong? What if you decide and then regret it? What if there's a better option you haven't considered yet? Hours pass, days pass, sometimes weeks or months, and the decision is still sitting there, unmade. And you feel exhausted from thinking about it, even though you haven't actually done anything. That's overthinking, and almost everyone does it. But here's the thing most people don't know. Overthinking is not a thinking problem. It is not about intelligence or being too careful, or not having enough information. Overthinking is a fear problem wearing the costume of a thinking problem. And because people misdiagnose it, they try to solve it with more thinking, which only makes it worse. Today I'm going to show you exactly what overthinking is, why it happens, and, most importantly, what the Stoics actually did to break out of it. Stay until the end. The practice I'm going to give you is one of the simplest and most immediately useful things in this entire series. In episode 1 of this season, we looked at the stories that keep people average, the limiting beliefs they've accepted without ever questioning them. In episode 2, we went under those stories and found the fear that generates them. Today we look at what fear does when it gets really clever, when it doesn't just stop you with a feeling of dread. It stops you by making you think, by generating an endless stream of questions, considerations, possibilities, and complications that feel like careful, responsible analysis, but are actually just a very sophisticated way of not moving. Overthinking is fear with a college degree, and this episode is about seeing through it. Subscribe now and hit the bell, because this season is getting deeper every episode, and episode 4 goes somewhere you'll want to be. Don't miss it. Part 1. What overthinking actually is. Here is the most honest definition of overthinking I've found. It is the mind trying to think its way out of something it can only walk its way out of. You cannot think your way to the right relationship. You have to be in one. You cannot think your way to knowing whether a career path is right for you. You have to try it. You cannot think your way to confidence. You have to do the thing that makes you nervous and discover, in the doing, that you were capable. Most of the things we overthink are things that can only be resolved by action, by information that only reality can give you. And yet, we keep trying to get that information through more analysis, more research, more consideration, as if somehow, if we think long enough and carefully enough, the right answer will appear before we have to risk anything. It won't. The answer is always on the other side of the action, and overthinking is the mind's most convincing strategy for avoiding getting there. Marcus Aurelius dealt with overthinking constantly. He was responsible for decisions that affected millions of lives. Every choice had consequences he could not fully predict. And he had a powerful, highly intelligent mind that was very good at generating more and more reasons to hesitate. What you see in the Meditations is a man actively fighting against his own mind's tendency to spin, to complicate, to keep analyzing rather than deciding and acting. And one of the things he kept writing to himself was remarkably simple. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Marcus Aurelius, Meditations, power over your mind. Not the events, not the outcomes. Your mind. And specifically, the power to stop it from running in circles and redirect it toward action. This is exactly what the Stoics were training. Not the elimination of thought, the discipline of knowing when to stop thinking and start moving. Part 2. Why smart people overthink the most. Here is something that might surprise you. The people who overthink the most are often the most capable, not the least capable. Why? Because overthinking requires a powerful imagination. It requires the ability to generate multiple scenarios, to anticipate complications, to see things from different angles. These are all genuinely useful skills. The problem is when they get turned on a decision that requires action rather than analysis, and they never turn off. A highly intelligent mind can generate reasons to hesitate indefinitely. It can always find another angle to consider, another risk to evaluate, another question that hasn't been answered yet. And because this process feels like being careful and responsible, it gets confused with wisdom. But wisdom is not the same as analysis. Wisdom is knowing when to analyze and when to act. And the Stoics were very clear that action, not more thinking, is almost always what the situation actually requires. There is a real cost to overthinking that most people don't account for. They focus on the cost of making the wrong decision. They don't account for the cost of making no decision. Here's what happens when you overthink a decision over a long period of time. First, you spend mental energy, sometimes enormous amounts of it, without getting anywhere. That energy is not available for other things. It leaks out into background anxiety, restlessness, difficulty focusing, a general feeling of being stuck that colors everything else in your life. Second, the window for the decision often closes. The opportunity moves on. The moment passes, and you're left with the same situation, except now the option you were overthinking no longer exists. You made a decision by not making one. And third, and this is the most insidious cost, every time you overthink, instead of decide, you train your mind to overthink. You reinforce the pattern. You make it more likely that next time you face a decision, the mind will do the same thing. You are building the habit of not deciding. And habits, as we've talked about throughout this series, shape your identity. Omnia aliena sunt, tempus tantum nostrum est. Everything is alien to us. Time alone belongs to us. Seneca, Letters to Lucilius. Time is the one thing that belongs to you, and every hour spent going in circles in your own head is an hour you cannot get back. Seneca did not mean this as a philosophical abstraction. He meant it as a practical urgency. The time you spend not deciding is time your life is spending without you. Part 3. The 4 types of overthinking. Overthinking doesn't look the same for everyone. Let me describe 4 specific patterns. See which one you recognize most in yourself. This person never feels like they have enough information. There's always one more book to read, one more course to take, one more expert to consult, one more thing to understand before they're ready to act. They mistake preparation for progress. They stay in the research phase indefinitely because research feels productive and action feels risky. The Stoic response: at some point, you have enough information to take the next step, not all the steps, the next one, and the information you need for the steps after that will only be available once you've taken the first one. More research cannot give you what only experience can. This person goes to the worst possible outcome immediately and stays there. What if it fails? What if I lose everything? What if I make this choice and regret it for the rest of my life? The mind locks onto the darkest scenario and replays it in high definition, making it feel increasingly real and increasingly inevitable. The Stoic response is actually to use the worst case deliberately, but constructively, the way we discussed in episode 2 with premeditatio malorum. You look at the worst case directly, assess whether you could handle it, and then return to reality. The difference between Stoic negative visualization and the worst case spiral is that the Stoic version is deliberate, time-limited, and ends with a decision. The spiral is involuntary, endless, and ends with paralysis. This person can't decide because they can't stop comparing their options to each other, and their options to what other people have chosen, and what other people have chosen, to what seems to be working for those people, and on and on. Every option looks worse when compared to the idealized version of a different option. Epictetus was direct about comparison. It is one of the most reliable paths to misery, not because comparison is always wrong, but because comparing your real option to someone else's idealized option is not an accurate comparison. You're comparing your behind the scenes to their highlight reel. You're comparing the full complexity of your choice to the simplified version of theirs. This person isn't looking for a good decision. They're looking for the perfect decision, the one with no downsides, no risks, no trade-offs. And because that decision doesn't exist, they never decide. The Stoics had a very clear position on this. The good decision made now is almost always better than the perfect decision made never. Life does not wait for perfect conditions. Imperfect action in the real world produces real results. Perfect planning in your head produces nothing. Do not indulge in expectations of what the future may bring. Do not dwell on what is past. Confine yourself to the present. Marcus Aurelius, Meditations. The perfectionism loop lives in the future, a future where every scenario has been analyzed and the perfect path has been identified. The Stoic response is to come back to the present moment, where the actual next step is visible and takeable, even if every step after that is not yet clear. Look at those 4 patterns: the infinite research loop, the worst-case spiral, the comparison trap, the perfectionism loop. What do they all have in common? None of them are actually about finding the right answer. They are all, in different disguises, about avoiding the moment of commitment, about staying in the pre-decision phase where you haven't risked anything yet, haven't been proven wrong yet, haven't had to face the real consequences yet. The mind, left to its own devices, will stay in that phase indefinitely if you let it, because the pre-decision phase feels like progress. It feels responsible. It feels thorough. But it isn't progress. It is the appearance of progress while standing completely still. Seneca wrote about this with the kind of impatience you can still feel 2,000 years later. We used this quote in episode 1 of this season, but in the context of overthinking, it lands differently. While we are postponing, life speeds by. Seneca, Letters to Lucilius. The person who is overthinking is often worked very hard. They are researching, analyzing, comparing, planning. They are busy. They just aren't moving. And busy is not the same as moving. Your life is moving whether you are or not. Part 4. The Stoic Cure for Overthinking. The Stoic cure for overthinking is not about thinking better. It is about recognizing when thinking has done its job and action needs to take over. The Stoics believed in using reason fully, but they also believed that reason has a purpose, and the purpose is to inform action, not replace it. When your thinking is helping you understand a situation more clearly so you can act more wisely, it is working correctly. When your thinking is going in circles and preventing you from acting at all, it has stopped serving you and started serving the fear underneath it. The question is not, have I thought about this enough? The question is more thinking actually going to change what I do? If the answer is yes, keep thinking. If the answer is no, if you already know what you would do once you finally decided, then the thinking is not helping, it is stalling, and it is time to act. Seek not that the things which happen should happen as you wish, but wish the things which happen to be as they are, and you will have a tranquil flow of life. Epictetus, Enchiridion overthinking is, at its core, a resistance to reality. A refusal to accept that you cannot control every outcome, cannot predict every consequence, cannot eliminate every risk. The mind keeps spinning because it is trying to achieve certainty in a world that does not offer it. The Stoic acceptance that Epictetus describes is not passivity. It is not giving up. It is the recognition that your job is to make the best decision you can with the information you have, and then do your best with the outcome. The outcome itself is not fully in your control, and trying to control it through more and more thinking is an exhausting, impossible project. Let go of the need for certainty. Make the best decision you can, act, and then work with what comes. Jeff Bezos described a decision-making tool he uses that is essentially a modern version of Stoic negative visualization. He calls it the regret minimization framework. When facing a major decision, he imagines himself at 80 years old, looking back at his life, and he asks, which choice will I regret more, having tried this and failed, or having never tried at all? He used this framework when deciding to leave a successful career to start Amazon. He knew he might fail. He knew he might lose everything he'd built. But he also knew that at 80, the regret of not trying would be far larger than the regret of trying and failing. So he acted. This is exactly the Stoic move. Not eliminating uncertainty. Not thinking until you feel certain. Asking the right question, the one that cuts through the noise, and then making a decision based on what actually matters to you. Most overthinking happens because we're asking the wrong question. We ask, what's the safest choice? Or, what's the choice most likely to succeed? Instead, ask, what's the choice I'll be most proud of? What's the choice that aligns with the person I want to become? What's the choice that, at 80, I'll be glad I made? That question cuts through almost everything else. Let me take a moment to show you how this episode connects to where we've been and where we're going. In Season 1, Episode 2, we talked about the distraction trap, how the external world is engineered to fragment your attention. Overthinking is the internal version of the same problem. While distraction pulls your attention outward to 100 different things, overthinking pulls it inward to 100 different versions of the same thing. Both leave you unable to focus. Both leave you unable to act. Different mechanism, same result. In Episode 2 of this season, we looked at fear as the engine underneath average. Overthinking is what happens when that fear gets sophisticated, when it learns to use your own intelligence against you, when it generates just enough plausible reasoning to keep you from having to face the discomfort of deciding. Episode 4 of this season is The Art of Mental Toughness. And what you'll find there is that mental toughness is not about being hard or cold or unfeeling. It is about developing the capacity to act clearly in the face of uncertainty, to make a decision and follow through even when the outcome isn't guaranteed. Everything we've done in this episode is direct preparation for that one. The series is building. Stay with it. The practical solution, the 2-minute rule, and the deadline here is your practice for this episode. It's 2 simple tools that work together. Both are built directly on Stoic principles. Both can be used immediately. 1. The 2-minute thinking cap. For any decision you've been overthinking, set a timer for 2 minutes. In those 2 minutes, write down every consideration that feels relevant. The upsides, the downsides, the risks, the opportunities, the things you're afraid of. Get it all out. Don't filter. When the timer goes off, stop writing. Look at what you've written. In almost every case, everything important is already on the page. Everything that comes after 2 minutes is repetition, not new insight. The mind is not adding value anymore. It is going in circles. The 2-minute cap is not about limiting your thinking. It is about recognizing when thinking has finished its actual work. 2. The decision deadline. Give yourself a specific deadline for the decision. Not soon or when I feel ready. A real date and time. By Friday at noon, I will have decided. By the end of this week, I will have made this call. Write it down. Tell someone if it helps. The deadline does 2 things. It creates a forcing function that breaks the overthinking loop, and it shifts your mindset from I need to figure this out perfectly. 2. I need to make the best decision I can by this date. Those are very different mental states. The second one is far more likely to produce an actual decision. And the act of deciding, of committing to a direction and moving, will give you more useful information in 1 week than 6 more months of analysis ever could. 2 minutes to think, a real deadline to decide. This is not about being reckless. It is about respecting the actual purpose of thinking, which is to help you act, and not letting it become a substitute for acting. Marcus Aurelius used something like this every morning. He didn't let himself ruminate endlessly on the problems of the day. He thought about them clearly, decided how he would approach them, and then went out and did it. Not perfectly, just decisively. And decisiveness, practiced every day, is one of the most powerful habits a person can build. Never let the future disturb you. You will meet it if you have to, with the same weapons of reason which today arm you against the present. Marcus Aurelius, Meditations. You don't need to solve the future in your head before you step into it. You just need to take the next step, and then the one after that. And the tools you'll need for each step will be available to you when you get there, not before. Stop thinking. Start moving. The clarity you're waiting for is waiting for you on the other side of the action. Before you go, I want you to do something right now. In the comments, write the decision you've been overthinking, not the analysis, not the pros and cons. Just the decision itself, in 1 sentence, and then write the deadline you're setting for yourself to decide. Making it public makes it real. And you might find that the act of writing it down in 1 sentence, cutting through all the complexity and naming the actual decision, already makes it feel more manageable. I'll be reading every comment. And the people in this community who are doing this work alongside you, they'll see it too. Think of someone in your life who is stuck. Not stuck because they're lazy or don't care. Stuck because they're in their own head. Spinning. Unable to decide. Trying to think their way to clarity that only action can give them. Send them this episode, because sometimes you can't see the loop you're in until someone names it for you. This might be the thing that names it. Subscribe and turn on notifications, because episode 4 is the art of mental toughness, and it takes everything from this season so far and turns it into something you can carry into the hardest moments of your life. You don't want to miss it. I want to leave you with this. The decision you've been overthinking, the one that's been sitting in the back of your mind for weeks or months or maybe years, is not going to get clearer by thinking about it more. You already have most of what you need. What you're missing is not more information. It's the decision itself. Make it. Imperfectly. With incomplete information. With some remaining uncertainty. Make it anyway. Because the person you are becoming through the practice of deciding and acting is worth far more than the person you would be if you waited until everything was perfect. And nothing is ever perfect. But something can always be next. If someone is able to show me that what I think or do is not right, I will happily change, for I seek the truth by which no one was ever truly harmed. Marcus Aurelius, Meditations. You won't always be right. Make the decision anyway. Adjust when you learn more. That's not a failure of planning. That's how it actually works. I'll see you in episode 4.